This man is a police forensic expert. He's the father of criminal entomology. He uses maggots or flies to date the death of victims and determine the circumstances surrounding murders. His diagnosis contributes key elements to investigations.
Califora vicina.
By the time Marcel meets murder victims, they are usually decomposed. By studying the development phase of the maggots in the body, he can determine the date of the crime. Marcel helped solve many of the crimes which shook Belgium over the last few years, particularly child abuse cases, as the maggots found in the children's nappies made it possible to determine for how long they had been neglected. The way in which fly larvae develop in bodies also makes it possible to determine cause of death by overdoses of cocaine and heroin.
I was an expert witness in a case which had been dragging on for a year. 3,500 people had been questioned with no results, and it was the larvae of a single fly found in the body of a partially carbonized adolescent which made it possible to fix the date of the murder exactly. The killer, who had also raped the girl, was condemned for life.
Marcel's expert opinions have made it possible to wind up hundreds of cases. Depending on climatic conditions, the workers of death operate in different shifts. The first one is made up of Califora, alias the bluebottles, which attack in the hours immediately following the murder. The second fly squad moves in 8 to 10 hours after death. These are the layers, the green flies. And other squads include Coleoptera, Acarians, and other species of flies.
Okay.
These are fly traps. Hunting with wet umbrellas, Marcel and his wife have built up a huge collection.
Look, you can see it so well. It's superb. Just look at its wings. Can you see, Marcel?
There are no flies on Marcel. For him, fly catching is not a hobby, but the only way to be sure to identify all the different species found in criminal cases. Although their brain is no bigger than a pinhead, Califora flies can locate a decomposing body several miles away purely by smell. Its eyes can see through 360 degrees, which tell it the best way to land on the body. Philippe is a forensic doctor working in Kosovo to find evidence about genocide for the International Tribunal in The Hague. Marcel's area of expertise is therefore vital.
Marcel, these are the first flies which got to the bodies.
Yes, those are the bluebottles which are the first to arrive on bodies lying out in the open.
In the open? That means that they were killed out of doors.
Yes.
And what are these flies?
Those are tiny flies which burrow into the ground to get to a body buried up to 1 meter down.
Yes, it was the clouds of tiny flies over the mass graves which helped me find the bodies underneath.
Yes.
Walls may have ears, but bodies have transmitters. Icarians are real police informers for the forensic police. In this murder case, they can indicate, like fly eggs, very precisely by their presence and their stage of development, the date of death. They provide evidence while waiting for a full autopsy. Dr. James Webb is a mite specialist. Working as undertakers, mites can turn corpses into mummies before mold starts to decompose them. This time, James has brought back a chigger, a very rare mite in California. The chigger, this monster, loves places where the skin is thin, the buttocks and zones tightened by underclothing, like the breasts and the crotch. A few years ago, James solved the Ventura case, one of the strangest criminal affairs of his life, thanks to chigger mites.
It was a 1 in a billion chance that the suspect raped and killed this young lady in an area of high chigger infestation. And in a lineup with other suspects, he was the only one who had chigger bites. And with our research at the site and this information, it was key evidence that linked him to the scene of the crime, because chiggers were also so rare in this area. Because of the weightiness of our information, I was advised to hire a bodyguard, and I also bought a weapon.
Your attention, please. This is an important announcement. A black suitcase containing explosives has been detected by the anti-terrorist bees. It will now be destroyed by the police.
This fiction is soon to become reality. Insects are being transformed into real indicators of illicit substances and pollution detectors for public services. Bees are the new elite troops, sniffing out letter bombs, detecting bacteria and viruses in bioterrorism alerts, and detecting mines on battlefields.
Okay, Mathilde, now if you can sample. That's great. You can sample along the inside there. No problem.
Thanks to the air inhaled via the tube, trained bees, enclosed in the blue box, are able to immediately detect the tiniest particle of explosive. John Wilkins, a scientist at Incense UK, the company that developed the system, gives a demonstration to the security services at the Parisian airport, Charles de Gaulle.
In this box, we have the soldiers of tomorrow. We have trained the bees to detect explosives. They have an incredibly good success rate.
Could you tell me what is the reaction of the bees when they detect an explosive?
When the bee detects the explosive, it extends its proboscis, which is the scientific term for tongue. Here's a real-time chart of that process. When you see the extension, that's a hit. And if you see a hit like this, that means you must search the bag.
Is there a risk that the passenger could be stung by the bees?
No, absolutely not. The bees are safely harnessed within the bee sensor unit.
These special agents operate as a trio. Each bee is connected to a sniffer tube. Their reactions are monitored by a micro camera that sends the image to a computer. The bees memorize a large number of different smells at very weak levels of concentration. Could ordinary domestic bees one day replace dogs in detecting explosives? Perhaps not, but the cost of their training is very low compared to their four-legged colleagues, and a single beehive could represent tens of thousands of winged security agents. Dr. Minha Femme de Leg is the French woman who instigated this research. She also trains bees to stick their tongues out to identify pollutants. As with dogs, the method consists of associating a smell with a reward, like sugared water. On contact with flowers, bees naturally stick their tongues out to extract the sweet nectar. After training in the laboratory, the bee will do the same when it identifies a memorized smell.
Right, I'm starting test number 2, still with pollutant A. Okay? She's sticking her tongue out.
But Minha has found a much simpler method than training by using the numerous beehives belonging to beekeepers for biodetection.
Every one of these hives can become a detector of pollution. And in this way, we'll have created a grid covering all of France and then extending to Europe and the world. What's really interesting with bees is that they represent a sampling method that's much cheaper than chemical methods. There, that's perfect. Between the motorway and the forest, I think we should be at an intermediate level as far as pollution goes.
There's an average of 50 vehicles per minute during rush hour.
Bees are genuine pollution indicators. While gathering pollen and pollinating, minute samples of dust, water and air from a very wide area are collected in the down of their bodies, providing information on the presence of any pollution agents.
I'm going to send a sample of about 20 bees to the laboratory, so we'll have a good idea of pollution levels in the Paris Opera neighborhood.
Thanks to beekeepers who set up their hives even in the heart of towns, bees will become biodetectors for air quality. Italian scientists have been successfully experimenting with samples of bees to analyze lead-based industrial pollution. Following the Chernobyl nuclear accident, it was also found that bees and the pollen collected on their bodies were very good indicators of radioactivity. In Belgium, in the Anvers region, Frederik Hendricks and Debbie Arali use wolf spiders as a pollution bioindicator. These researchers believe that the spider is even capable of adapting to strong heavy metal pollution.
My research on pollution and spiders is the use of spiders as a bioindicator for metal pollution. The problem is that metal pollution, you can measure it in the soil, but it's not always relevant which part is bioavailable, so it's toxic for the environment. And that's why we use spiders, because spiders are able to accumulate metals in their body, and this gives an estimate of at least a small part of the ecosystem which is contaminated with heavy metals.
How many do you catch today?
I think about 30, maybe a bit less. I didn't count them exactly today. I had one male, and I think it's probably the last one. This was a female with quite a small egg cocoon. Appeared to me. Normally we should see it in the lab that they have smaller egg cocoons, because it's indeed one of the most polluted areas that we sampled together with galgenweel and so on.
Do you remember the concentrations over here?
I thought it was, in a few animals, it was about 100 ppm of cadmium.
Oh,
of cadmium only, and of zinc about 3 times as high as in the other population.
$18.3.
Yes, indeed. That's small. Small one.
Hmm? The research of Frederick, it showed us that there's clear differences between polluted and non-polluted areas in the size of the females and the female eggs. So we were wondering if it also would lead to evolutionary changes between populations.
Will pollution provoke an evolutionary change in this species of spider to make it better adapted? Will the genetic mutations vary as a result? This is what our 2 researchers are close to proving.
The eggs which are in the cocoon are of much larger size compared to eggs produced by spiders from a reference population. And what's more, we breed those 2 populations in the laboratory and crossed them, and then we saw that the big eggs are genetically based. So it appears that there is a genetic adaptation going on in the spiders living in those polluted tidal marshes.
To better demonstrate the adaptation of these spiders to the pollutants surrounding them, Debbie uses a simple test. She identifies a non-polluted male that she puts in competition with a polluted male in front of a female taken from the contaminated banks of the Scheldt River.
The hypothesis in this experiment was that the female would choose a male from her own population. So in a polluted area, the female would choose a male from a polluted area as well, while a male from a non-polluted area would be chosen preferably by a female from a non-polluted area.
The 2 researchers have uncovered the mechanism of genetic evolution of the wolf spider in a polluted environment. Initially, to increase its resistance, its DNA is modified, giving rise to mutant subspecies. Then the individuals of these subspecies reproduce between themselves. Thus, they transmit their mutant genes to their offspring, who will be better equipped for survival. While insects are good indicators of soil pollution, they can also be excellent depolluting agents. This was the case in Australia, where an insect became a national hero in the fight against cowflap pollution. It all started 2 centuries ago, when cattle were imported to Australia for the very first time. With time and the build-up of cowflaps, fly larvae had ideal conditions for proliferation, and an invasion began. The fly invasion made life unbearable for the Australians.
You had to spend time chasing the flies away from your eyes and face. It was a great nuisance, and one just had to put up with it because there was just no practical solution.
The flies were such a problem that a law was passed in many Australian towns forbidding outdoor dining. Today, this story is history, thanks to the deductions of Dr. Bornemisza. Australia needed dung beetles, but even though over 4,000 species exist, none were native to Australia. Dung beetles feed almost entirely on their little floral friends, but they are highly specialized, and each one is adapted to feed on a particular kind of poop. So Dr. Bornemisza had to find just the right dung beetles for Australia.
I traveled the world to select the right species climatically suitable for Australian conditions.
In Africa, he finally found the dung beetles who were perfectly designed to eat Australian cowpats. And this fecal-eating beetle set foot on the Australian continent for the very first time. The results were incredible. The cowpats disappeared in a matter of days instead of several years, and because the flies had nowhere to lay their eggs, they left town. Operation Dung Beetle was a success, and Dr. Bonamitsa was honored at the highest level for his work. The research program ended in 1985, but flies and dung is still a big problem in farming areas. John Fiam, a former colleague of Dr. Bonamitsa, has come up with a solution. He's set up a company which distributes dung beetles.
The farmers are very keen to get the beetles. I can only supply about 1 order in 6.
Dung beetles have adapted so well to Australia that they have become an important part of its ecological balance.
We need every helping hand that nature can provide to create a sustainable system in the farmlands of Australia. The cattle are only removing about 60% of the protein from the grass they eat. The other 40% of protein gets dropped on the ground, and that's what dung beetles live on.
Every year, John identifies, collects and redistributes millions of dung beetles.
A 1,000 beetles that are sent out to a farm would eventually build up into tens of millions of beetles. We have the species here. They're often only sitting in little pockets around the country. I know where the species are, and when they become abundant enough, I'll be able to harvest them and then distribute them to areas where they are climatically suitable. We need some fresh dung. How long have they been in this paddock? Only today.
There you go.
Come here, fellas.
Beautiful.
So these...
Just flick them off your fingers.
Put the lid back on, didn't want to lose too many. Gone right underneath.
Oh, they'd be very pleased to get into that good quality dung. As far as I know, I'm the only person in the world distributing dung beetles.
They have specialized mouthparts, and contrary to popular belief, use them not to eat the dung, but to suck on the bloom's nectar. Adults aerate the soil and take the excrement down to a depth of 30 centimeters, which fertilizes the lower soil layers of Australia.
Much better than any fertilizer the chemical industry can produce.
Laboratory experiments have proved that millet plants grow better with cowpats, but even better with dung beetles. In Africa as well, farmers employ insects, termites, not just to clean the soil, but also as recyclers and laborers.
Is that him?
Yes, that's him.
Okay.
That's our farmer who uses the termites.
I'm thrilled. It's the first time I'm meeting a farmer who uses termites. Usually farmers here hate them.
Donc humbe vui ngo le neba sensolo ga mele mogoda bamba ko tenganga vui no kontala.
He says that even his grandparents knew about using termites. They used to say that men till the topsoil and the termites till the subsoil. They're complementary. When the earth dries out, but there is water 5 meters down, the termites bring up a little moisture.
The technique developed by the Zai people uses the gluttony of the litter termites. They are attracted by laying straw on ground as hard as concrete. To get to it, the termites tunnel up from their nests, leaving small galleries. When the rains finally come, the water trickles down the holes to irrigate the earth. Abdoulaye Mando, agricultural engineer, is trying to rehabilitate the old African Zai tradition. But the farmers have got into the habit of thinking of termites as crop pests.
Here we don't have straw, so we have no termites. Here we have straw, so we have termites. You can see the result for yourself. Verdant vegetation.
In China, spiders are taken on to clean the rice paddies of all their parasites. Some of them, wolf spiders, even wait in ambush for their prey, which they take by surprise by overturning them. They are excellent hunters, hence their name. Professor Hangma Yen tries to increase awareness among the farmers about using spiders rather than systematically calling upon insecticides. Even though the method may appear rudimentary, the United States and France have also begun to recruit spiders as natural pesticides to protect their vines.
Okay, let's begin the lesson. Today I'm going to talk to you about spiders that kill insects. In other words, we can use spiders to kill rice field pests and thus increase the rice harvest. The first harvest is already finished. This field is waiting to be ploughed. When the field is flooded with water, we put hay down to collect the spiders. Look, when the water comes, the spiders take refuge on the hay. And then we collect the hay full of spiders, and we put them in the fields for the second harvest, where the rice has just been planted.
In certain regions of China, farmers have thus succeeded in improving their harvests by hiring wolf spiders as natural pesticides. But even with films and propaganda, the taboos stand firm.
I think spiders are very dirty and repulsive. Why do you say they're good?
They kill for food, especially the insects that eat rice, so they are very useful. First step, the spider injects its poison into the insect. Then it covers it with saliva to destroy the tissues.
Today, a practical session.
We're going to learn how to put hay in the field for transferring the spiders. Do like me. And then we're going to take the hay and put it in another field to protect the spiders.
Professor Hangma Yen has calculated that cultivated land contains no fewer than 1 million spiders of all sizes per hectare. So why deprive yourself of these unsalaried workers?
Look, the spiders are climbing onto the hay. This proves that this method is very effective. We can use this method to protect the spiders and the harvest. Do you understand? In the 1960s and 70s, our country began to use many pesticides to exterminate insect parasites. The insects strengthened their resistance, and pollution increased with the doses of pesticide. We know that spiders can combat these parasites without harming the plants. In addition, the spiders are plentiful and varied, so we must use them.
In China, this technique has enabled a 50% decrease in the use of pesticides. To convince the most reticent farmers, scientists have counted the number of prey captured over 8 months by a single Argiope spider. The result, 900 prey. Whereas spiders are excellent natural pesticides, red ants are also real predators for many invertebrates. This special convoy contains nothing less than an ant's nest. In Italy, they move ants' nests from one forest to another, not to send the wood ants on holiday, but to set them to work. If ants are sometimes a curse for farmers, they are very useful to man. They are excellent exterminators of processionary caterpillars that ravage pine trees. Processionary caterpillars devour large quantities of pine needles, but fortunately the ant lies in wait for them. Forest rangers know that the presence of wood ant colonies in the forest is a sign of good health. An Italian law dating from 1880 imposes a heavy fine on anyone destroying an ant's nest.
Certo che ormai fa caldo, eh? Guarda lì quanti nidi.
Quest'anno ce ne sono proprio tanti.
E ormai la processionaria...
For Paolo Ballardini, the pines are already full of processionary nests.
Sono tutte giù.
Con questa stagione qua sì.
Vero?
It's spring. The caterpillars are emerging from their nests in Indian file, forming long processions. But Paolo Ballardini of the Monte Alp Reserve is watching.
In Italy, since the 50s, forest rangers have been taking entire wood ants' nests from the mountains, but such nests are becoming fewer. Carried in trucks, these ants are introduced into areas overrun with pine-eating caterpillars.
At the end of the summer, Paolo collects the butterfly traps to check whether the caterpillars have completed the metamorphosis in spite of the ants.
2, 3, 4. That's normal.
Guarda le levature di processionaria, sono già aperte, le piccole larve hanno già fatto I primi danni.
Paolo notes that certain butterflies have already managed to lay their eggs in the pine needles, but fortunately the only worker around is an ant, already busy filling her larder with fresh eggs. Welcome to Disney World. Here the mites are helping the 150 gardeners. Here too, man arranges real wars, but at a microscopic level between the prey and their predators. A whole fantastic world silently working for the pleasure of the public. Attacks by tetranochides cause major damage to crops. Their offensives are catastrophic as they move around in armies. Their objective, to suck the sap from the plants. But even tetranochides have enemies, the phytocilus. Phytocilus are predators gardeners put on the flowers, ready to feast on their prey. Some even attack giants like mosquitoes and flies. These predators are remarkably effective. Their saliva paralyzes the prey and kills it, even if it is not always eaten. To immobilize a large prey, they often gang up. Most of the time, the prey is emptied alive. These predators also attack the eggs of prey protected by webs, a massacre. This predator, another species, is trapped in a web, but once released, it empties its prey in a few moments. Two against one is not always enough. The prey escapes. Whose fault was that?
When we see webbing on a plant, that means we do have a high infestation of mites, but still we don't like to get out there and use pesticides, mainly for the safety of our guests and the children. We all know how children are. They like to get into the plants, they like to taste them, they like to play in them. For that reason, and that reason only, we don't use pesticides. We go through our predaceous mite program. That's releasing beneficial mites to handle the problem.
The predator-prey ratio must be 1 to 5. To check it is an obstacle course.
Disney World, they employ over 50,000 people. But us in pest management, we employ over 1 million predaceous mites a year that work night and day to eat the harmful mites. Thus, we have reduced our use of harsh pesticides by over 75%, which is an astounding figure.
To save Minnie's leaves from mites, Mike works gently. Europe also uses mercenary mites. England launched the first attacks on predators in 1874. Today in France, approximately 50,000 predators per hectare are released on many agricultural and vegetable species. Cucumbers, zucchini, strawberry plants, fruit trees and vines are protected by mite helpers. These biological methods compete with the chemical industry. Already 10 to 20% of the crops in heated greenhouses in France and Holland are treated with killer mites. Our new domestic pets will be massively used in farming in tomorrow's world. Another original approach consists of giving insects a completely unexpected function. Thus, in some greenhouses, flies have replaced bees as pollinators for flowers. Bees are renowned for being hard workers, but bees are too selective. As for flies, you can be sure that they will be satisfied with every type of scent, even, and perhaps preferably, when it is not as sweet as roses. Will pollen-carrying flies put bees out of work? Bees help flowers to reproduce by moving pollen from flower to flower. Albert Einstein thought that without pollination by bees, man would have only 4 years left to survive on Earth. For some German scientists, Mars should be pollinated. Future space missions will last 2 to 3 years, and it is impossible to transport enough food to plan the conquest of space and permanent settlement of numerous human colonies without producing food locally. One solution would be to create giant opaque greenhouses in which pollination could well be feasible. NASA favors the idea of using pollinating robots, more reliable for the moment. They have already successfully tested the impact of microgravity on bees, and pollination appears to be possible. Perhaps one day there will be tomato and poppy fields growing on Mars. This scientist is not working on pollinating Mars, rather on its conquest using aircraft developed thanks to the bees' eyes.
Okay, so it's just a matter of knowing when the plane is up, so don't get distracted when the aeroplane is flying around. Keep your eye on it, know what's going on, because there is a potential for danger here.
These Australian specialists on bees' eyesight have been collaborating for several years with NASA on a project that is now in test phase.
Where is it now? Where it is now.
Okay, I'll hand over now.
Okay, that's basically autonomous, right, Dean?
Yeah, it is.
100 kilometres an hour.
Uh-oh.
Take control. Nose up, nose up, nose up.
Oh, shit.
What happened?
I don't know, I didn't respond.
The use of bee robots on Mars is planned at least 10 years from now. Paradoxically, bees will see the red planet in blue. In fact, they can perceive all colors and ultraviolet rays except for red. Professor Srinivasan and his team are the fathers of the NASA-sponsored project.
This doesn't look like a bee at all, Jaman. Do you think it'll work?
Well, it's designed for a very thin atmosphere, so it'll fly quite fast, several hundred kilometres an hour, but it will fly.
If you were to fly an aircraft on Mars through radio control from Earth, that would not work very well because, the signals take several minutes to come from Mars to Earth. And by the time you see an approaching mountain, for example, it's too late. The aircraft would have collided with the mountain. So we are using principles that we have learned from the bee about navigation using vision to pilot unmanned vehicles in Mars.
These principles also interest the Army.
One of the applications of this research is to use small flying vehicles that a soldier can carry in his backpack and launch them over a hill, for example, to see if there's any danger on the other side, rather than going out there and getting shot. So these vehicles will help extend the eyes and ears of a soldier in the battlefield.
Although the 5,000 facets in their eyes give bees a good perception of shapes and colors with a 360-degree range, this is not the feature that Professor Srinivasan is working on. Unlike our own eyes, bees' eyes work individually.
In this condition, both walls are moving in the same direction at the same speed, so bees will fly roughly down the middle of the tunnel. However, if I now slow down one of these walls, so the bee thinks that surface is much further away, so it moves closer to that surface to compensate. So this, we think, is how bees fly down the middle of gaps, by balancing the image motion on the two sides.
Professor Srinivasan just has to convince his financial backers that such an object can fly thanks to his studies on the bee's vision. While the incredible capacity of bees' eyes to be able to correct their flight path during flight has been studied, that of flies also has been the subject of many studies. The eyes of flies are made up of 3,000 individual lenses, which gives them 360-degree vision. Only movements are perceived in an extremely precise way. Flies break down movement like a film in slow motion and can process 200 images a second, whereas human eyes can only handle 12. That is why it is so difficult to crush flies on a window pane. For 25 years, this man has been spying on flies' eyes. His obsession is to understand how they operate so he can copy the system with electronic circuits. This hanging ball that the fly is rotating makes it possible to record the activity of the fly's neuron, its nerve circuits, and particularly those involved in vision. The noise you can hear is the work being done by the sight neurons. One by one, Professor Franceschini decodes them to find out which neurons help the fly detect movements and avoid obstacles.
By understanding how flies see, it may be possible to develop a significant field of application, including driverless vehicles and pilotless aircraft and satellite launchers. All insects have an automatic pilot in their head to guide them. This may be possible to develop and install in every type of vehicle that man is building today. An amazing automatic pilot based on sight.
Professor Franceschini's robot can move very quickly in this huge maze of obstacles without hitting anything. Most mobile robots designed recently do not use eyes but sonar ears. That is why they cannot move fast. Professor Franceschini recently completed RoboFly 2, a robot fly which looks much more like a domestic appliance than a fly. But he promises his next brainchild will have wings. Laurent Keller is also trying to copy the talents of insects to build robots, but this time is interested in the collective intelligence of ants.
This could be good. You see, there he's pushing the stone hard. Just like here, there are two of them pushing like rock ants.
That's standard engineering. One robot breaks down, but the others carry on working.
Yes.
Even house cleaners could be made redundant by robots with insect brains. Today we're a long way from the first humanoid machines. These little robots are designed to work together like ants.
You can imagine all sorts of applications for a group of robots getting together, for example, to clean an apartment, do the housework, or a group of robots used to clean up a radioactive zone. And to do that, we'll be copying what we've seen ants doing. And now we put, you could say, ant genes into robots to let them evolve, to see if they can act in a collective manner and do things a single robot can't do.
What's missing from industrial robots that copy humans is the independence of ant decision-making. Ants, even with their very primitive nervous system, can do several jobs without a boss. In less than 50 years, minuscule robot insects will invade our universe and work like ants do.